Elementary school kids, that's 7-year-olds, my friend, being taught that objectivity and the pursuit of perfection makes them sickening little white supremacists. And of course, according to the school's own definition, their objective condemnation of objectivity makes them big adult white supremacists. So shut those bigots down. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and that is objectively true that this is the Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Today, we start in Virginia, where Virginia, there is no common sense left at home, where elementary students are being taught that objectivity, the striving for correctness and perfectionism, are racist characteristics of white supremacy. And this one, we've done versions of this, as Katie will tell you, we've done versions of this before, but we've got to take a closer look at what this means. You can laugh this one off. You can just kind of roll your eyes over this. But what have they done? They are taking away the pillars on which liberty, freedom, financial success, faith, understanding, tolerance. There's so much that is being canceled here. In fact, these kids were exposed to a list of 15 different things that lead to white supremacy. And before going to that list, I'll let Katie hop in here.
So we talked about this story happening in Virginia at Belvedere Elementary School, and they are being taught, ages 6 to 11, elementary kids, are being taught this specific workbook from 2001. It's called Dismantling Racism Workbook, and it's by authors Tima Okun and Kenneth Jones. So again, we've talked about this. Within that, and the author is James Lindsay. If you want to look it up, James Lindsay. They had the lesson outline, and on the slide, it's the 15 characteristics of white supremacy. Oh, the culture of white supremacy. So this is what is actually being taught. And so today, we wanted to take a closer look at all 15 of these, because we weren't able to get through all of them last time. And it's just a reminder to mom and dad out there that this is what your taxpayer dollars are getting your children.
And to start with the 15 characteristics, take a look at those again. If you start with the one, you're telling kids between the ages of 6 and 11 that perfectionism, not perfectness, but that the push to try to be as perfect as you can in what you do, that's a problem now. What are you encouraging kids that young to do? You're recommending imperfection to them. You're actually telling them that the more moral high ground is failing or not trying or not striving. How about the number 2? Sense of urgency. Having a sense of urgency. So the building's on fire. If you, get all bent out of shape, you pull a fire alarm, you start screaming fire, 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 you're engaging in traits that are white supremacists. This is what they're telling kids?
Well, and as we know, overall, children will take their time with everything they do unless you give them a sense of urgency. And as someone who works with teenagers is in charge of getting them to have said sense of urgency, it's like pulling teeth. So if you are telling them now that that's white supremacy, even more so, they don't need an excuse to be lazy and just not have a sense of urgency to get something accomplished.
Let's focus on what this means for their own schooling. Go back to the list for a section. Okay, so perfectionism. You have to give kids full points now when they make mistakes. Right? If some kid gets 80 out of 100 on a test, then you should actually reward him for not getting 100, right? Because the 100 would be a sign not of academic achievement, but of perfectionism. So give all the lower the grade, the more points you have to give them, right? Number 2, for sense of urgency. You got 1 hour, you got 10 minutes to take this quiz, you got 1 hour to take this exam. Kids who cannot get it done, again, should be were rewarded over and above the high-achieving kids for not getting it done, for not paying attention to your white time limits. How about this next one? Defensiveness.
Yes, Dr. Duke.
Well, defensiveness. When you're attacked, roll over. I call it armadilloism, right? Or turtleism.
I was going to say armadillo.
So here's my question. Somebody accuses you of something and you're 7, and your response at 7 is to simply nod and smile. Is that right?
Wait, is nodding and smiling on the list?
If you're white,
take a look at it. We got to make sure if nodding and smiling are on there.
How about this one? Quantity over quality.
What happened to quality?
How is that white, by the way?
Completely reversed.
On what do you justify making that a white phenomenon? Quantity over quality.
Which is interesting because if you think about, especially in like the humanities, it's more like qualitative analysis versus in the math science where it's more quantitative based. Now they're reversing.
And you go back to the picture, quantity over quality. I mean, you're accusing white people of being the overachievers, right? And that's racist. And now quantity over quality.
But math is racist, and that's quantity.
How about the next one? Worship of the written.
No, written
Where
word.
do you see
Written word.
worship of the written? Now, what this is an attempt to apologize for the fact that in much African history and Native American history, there wasn't written language until Whitey showed up. That's all that is. It's a way of getting you to say, hey, just because you were writing things, white people, thousands of years before we were, don't think for 1 second that anybody cares about the written word. But again, having said that, then what do you do with illiterate kids?
They are literate now.
I mean, don't you? And this explains a lot. Why is it that our kids can't read and do math at their grade level? Maybe it's not an accident. Maybe it's not shoddy teaching. Maybe it is a consequence of this. If to be literate is to engage in worshiping of the written word, keep them profoundly ignorant. Keep going. There's only one right way. Only, well, wait, aren't we being told by these teachers there's only one way to see race? Aren't we being told by these schools there's only one attitude you can have if you're white? Aren't we being told that one right way is the wrong way? So now when a kid gets defensive and a kid says there's more, refuses to go your one way about race, what are you going to do about that then?
Wouldn't perfectionism be the right way?
Well,
but if there's only one,
you're pointing
right
out
way.
the internal inconsistencies of this,
yeah,
which is perfectionism. Go back.
This is true.
We want to get through all of these.
Don't get
defensive. Paternalism. You're telling 7-year-olds not to be paternalistic. That's a joy. Either or thinking. This is bad now. You could have for dinner. You could have the donut, or you can have the broccoli. Either or, you can go to bed like a good little boy or stay up all night. Literally trying to make an argument to us, right? That everything is acceptable all the time. Power hoarding.
What does that even mean?
Hoarding power, I guess.
It's power hoarding.
Oh, fear of open conflict. Who are the ones telling you if you're white, you're not going to speak? Who are the ones telling you that if you're white, we don't want to hear your arguments?
They seem to have.
Isn't that what we hear?
Yeah.
Right? That for white people to speak out on these issues, the same whites that aren't allowed to speak out are also the same whites who are afraid and defensive, as you see, right? My favorite, individualism.
Yes, that's white supremacy all around.
To tell those kids that they are actually individuals and not more than one. Tell them that is itself racist. So this is the kind of stuff. So now we have an answer. Your kids can't read, can't do math. Your kids are illiterate, and your kids are completely confused about reality. Not because your teachers suck. They do suck, but they suck not for being bad teachers. They suck for jettisoning actual teaching in the name of this garbage. And if you're going to come at me, bro, and say it's the teachers being forced to do it, these are the same teachers that will walk out if they're not getting paid, red for red. If they'll walk out for more money, they certainly could walk out for better pedagogy that's not instilling racism in the kids.
We know that COVID-19 has affected everyone in various ways, and it has affected academia potentially, fingers crossed, in a positive way. So now more than ever, we have charter schools that are having an opportunity to basically the can of worms has been opened, the blinds have been opened, and everyone is seeing what's going on inside of the public schools. And so when parents were seeing what's going on and not liking it, some parents want to shift their kids over to a hopefully actual educational system where the kids benefit and learn things. And so these charter schools are getting enrollments beyond their seams. And so they need to hire people. They need to make sure they're adequately housed and staffed for their students to be successful. Well, online charter schools, that's a great opportunity, a great way to do it. Of course, we can't have that. So we're just going to plain old defund them.
That's
We're
right.
going to do that in California. Because what does California do better than anything? Fund the stupid and defund anything that actually would make sense and benefit people. So we know the state legislature is basically, it's a Democrat supermajority, has been for decades now? Longer than I think I've been alive. And they passed an education budget bill which freezes any funding for online charter school at what they had for last year's levels. But what has happened since last year? COVID-19. And again, enrollment is busting at the seams. They need more teachers and all that. So if you think about it, they're in trouble when they're just actually, hopefully, trying to educate the children.
Yeah, the bottom line is that we can't succeed, so we'll be damned if we're going to let you succeed.
Yeah, that's pretty much the bottom line. Yeah.
Isn't this just the underlying attitude to everything we've said so far today, those 15 things, those 15 lists of characteristics that are white supremacist? We can't compete with you on some level. We have not achieved. We won't achieve. We are incapable of coming to the conclusions you come to, with that the idea that striving for excellence, that idea that individualism matter. We're not going to go along that road with you, but we're going to make sure you can't go there. So what Harold Bloom, the late Harold Bloom of Yale University, an English professor, controversial figure, but Bloom once called these people, in a slightly different context, he called them the school of resentment, and I think that's exactly right. These people don't create anything themselves. They just resent what's been created. They don't seem to want to get struggling population groups up to the same level as everybody else. They're content to pull down those who achieve. The school of resentment is what we're dealing with here. All you have is a glaring sense of shame of you and your cultures abiding underperforming, and you, when you were in charge of your cultures, doing nothing to fix it. And so now your response to that is, let's pull all culture down. I would say that the emperor has no clothes, but emperors and clothes are things that many of these clown shows couldn't produce if they had to.
Well, it's white supremacy as well.
White supremacy.
Of course. Janelle Smiley, who's a board member of the California Parents for Public Virtual Education, said that online charter schools in particular have seen an unprecedented number of applications during the pandemic. And many of these schools have committed to enrolling thousands of new students, as we've talked about. And as a result, they've needed to hire teachers, purchase technology, secure additional resources necessary to provide every student with a quality educational experience. We've had that here at Freedom Project as well.
Yep.
So we've been going through that, so we understand that. And if we would get, we don't take any funding, but if we would be in their case, like in California, we understand the devastation that could cause them as a school when you're trying to do something good and you are doing something good that students want to come there and you just can't provide the resources.
Well, at Freedom Project, we're successfully educating kids without one penny of state, city, federal, local money, nothing. And every week I get something from some agency, federal, state, or local, offering us money. Right? As the director, I see these things. They want you to take money for vaccines. They want you to take money for lunch programs. They want you to take money to improve racial teaching in your school. And the minute you take one thin dime of this money, they'll turn around and tell you what you can. You are now a charter school, not going to play that game. But it's even worse than that. By not funding these schools, California is in violation of their own law. But I guess that's a good lack of perfectionism, right? Online charter schools have filed suit against the state saying, quote, non-classroom-based schools will not be funded for the new students they enrolled. They are still required to serve them this year and incur all of the expenses and labor costs associated with serving incremental new students all the same, right? So despite the fact that legally California has an obligation to take care of these schools, these teachers, these students who need their supplies, California has decided they're not going to do it.
And just as an example of a student actually within the school system and how it works in California, we get these stories all the time about students and why they come to Freedom Project because we're able to serve them in a way that public school can't and won't. But one example is 8th grader Alexis DeVault. She's an eighth grader, but she's now newly unfunded in California. She has dyslexia and requires a special ed services, and she attends the Classical Academy in San Diego, which is an award-winning program. And because she saw how their school is so successful, that's precisely why she sought them out, because they have a history of teaching students remotely and because of her previous school experience. And so they had to shut that down virtually.
And according to the left, the anger at this little disabled girl for not being fully content to be disabled. How dare she seek out a school that seeks perfectionism and believes in objectivity for her own education? How dare this little disabled girl not be content to who she is, not be content to be behind, to make her disability the reason that she partners with leftists to tear down excellence and objectivity and perfectionism? How dare she overcome her own disability to become a great student at a thriving private school? This is exactly the kind of thing that liberal thinking has to destroy.
So as we know, those white supremacists are all about the quantity over the quality. Those white supremacists, they're the math ones. So we're going to do some math here on the Dr. Duke Show. We don't
You're going to do it.
We don't necessarily like the math here on the Dr. Duke Show. The maths. Well, we have a mom named Teresa Hopper, and she had problems. So what do you do when you can't help your 7-year-old do your math? Your 7-year-old do his math homework. All you do is go on Facebook and go into a group called the Family Lockdown Tips and Tricks. And there are more than 1 million members of this Facebook group. And you say, I hate homework, please help. And you take a screenshot of the homework question and you ask them. Again, this is for a 7-year-old.
7.
Math.
This is in the UK.
Math homework in the UK, yes. Carla says, I have 3 hundreds counters, 17 tens counters, and 16 ones counters. Already, I'm like, what are we talking about? Are we even talking about math? Okay,
if I had to assume, I would say that is 300, 170 is 470, 486.
Okay, that's where we're there. Boom. Now, A, can she make 2 equal 3-digit numbers? If so, draw the counters to show them.
It's a question that's unmoored from the statement.
I-
So what do you mean, can she make them? Is
Two
it
equal- I mean-
relevant to what?
Yeah.
Where is she supposed? Is she supposed to refer back to the first part of the question?
Well, and actually, you added them. It didn't say anything. It
No,
just
it
says
didn't.
that this is what Carla has, but it doesn't say, like,
Well,
add them together. And
if
now can
that's what
make
she
2
has,
equal?
that's the number she has.
Yeah,
But so when
okay.
you look at part A, can she make 2 equal 3? Is this with or without the 486?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
We don't know, so let's just go to B, right?
Right.
We're going to skip
So-
down to the next problem and
so
see if we can
what's-
do that one.
yeah.
Can she make 2 equal 3-digit numbers if she had to use all her counters? So you're assuming that
So
you
take all the
can't-
counters and then divide them by 2, right?
Isn't that what we just did in the... If so, like...
Yeah.
Okay, if so, again, let's just draw the counters to show them. Okay, moral of the story is no one understood what the heck was going on, including a person who has a PhD in maths, as Sharon Willis
As
says.
they call it in the
maths.
UK.
And I have no idea what this question is asking, unless there's a diagram to go with it or more explanation somewhere else.
That's it. Math people are very math specific. It's
called analytical.
They're math perfection. Oh, raises.
Why
Math people,
raises?
real math people, are perfectionists. They have to be. Because in math, there's almost always only one right answer. Although, in a story we're going to have for you later in the week, a mathematics society came out yesterday, just the other day, and said that they side with the critical race people. That we need critical race studies, even in math, because too many people think math has only one answer.
Anyway.
But you go back to the math person here, right? The math person.
The PhD in
she's
math.
right.
And-
in order for math to work, and notice what you've done, and I've said this from the beginning of things like Common Core math. You take math, which is about numbers, and now you make it about words. And you go back to that, throw that question you got back up here again, Mike. This is a failure of words to be able to describe numbers. And so what you're doing is you're confusing everybody, right? Math people are confused, as the math person just said, because there's not enough language here, or not the correct language, to be able to do something. Number two, the non-math people read this and they find out that it too fails the linguistic test. But see, this is the thing: when you take math and you make it about writing and language, then all of a sudden it levels the playing field. It's incomprehensible language that's not going to help math kids. And what do? Is to do the same math. If you're angry that some kids are reading and some kids can't, some kids have higher reading skills than others, then what do? You make language about numbers. Find a way to do that, right? Find a way to make the reading about numbers so you completely confuse everybody.
I'm going to give a spoiler and give you the answer. So if you don't want to know it, go la 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 la. So Teresa eventually confirmed that they got the answer right in the end, and she shared a snap of the answer here, and she wrote 172 as the answer for A, and 243 the answer for B, which actually I hope the 7-year-old son is the one who wrote it, but we don't know. And apparently the teacher did mark it as correct. Now, as we know, white supremacy, maybe it is correct.
How'd you get to
Maybe
those
it's
numbers? On the basis of what?
It's time for some real education. The phoenix is a mythological bird, as you saw in Harry Potter, that regenerates or is otherwise born again. Associated with fire and the sun, a phoenix lives a new life by arising from the ashes of its predecessor. Some legends say it dies in a show of flames and combustion. Others say that it simply dies and decomposes before being born again. Most accounts say that it lived for 500 years before rebirth.
One of the interesting things about this mythological figure is it's not particularly Greek or Roman or Norse. I'll let Mike scroll through some of the pictures of how artists have represented the phoenix while I give you some information. Various historians from the Greek Herodotus, Lucan, the Roman Pliny the Elder, Pope Clement I in the Middle Ages, Lactantius, Ovid, Isidore of Seville are among the many scholars and philosophers and teachers who have contributed to retelling the transmission of the phoenix motif. The phoenix symbolized renewal in general, as Katie pointed out, as well as entities and concepts such as the sun, time, the Roman Empire, Christ, Mary, and even virginity. The phoenix is best known in Greek mythology, but has analogs in other traditions, including Hindu, Russian, Persian, Arabian, Tibetan, Chinese, and Japanese. So this is a genuinely mythic creature, right? So if myth is archetypal creatures, if the typical mythological creature is an archetypal character specific to a particular culture, this one is global, it seems to me. This is a higher form of an archetype. Go back at some of those. Go back to that one for a second, where you actually have what looks like a scientific explanation on a number of levels of what a phoenix might be, what it might look like. Notice the quasi-scientific nature of this presentation. As I mentioned, the phoenix is best known in Greek, but all these other cultures have phoenix stories. The phoenix myth is also part of early Christian traditions, to the surprise of nobody. A bird an individualistic bird that ignites itself in flame and then is reborn and purified. There's a lot of that also has ties to the sun. There is a lot of Christian foundationalism there. The phoenix is sometimes pictured in ancient and medieval literature and medieval art as endowed with a halo, which emphasizes the bird's connection with the sun. In the oldest images of phoenixes on record, these halos often have 7 rays, like Helios, the Greek personification of the sun. Pliny the Elder of Rome also describes the bird as having a crest of feathers on its head, and the Old English Exeter book contains an anonymous 677-line 9th century poem consisting of paraphrase and abbreviation about the phoenix as an allegory of the resurrected Christ.
All right, well, just as a reminder, these premier beverage vessels of freedom are now available when you join our Patriot Club with a one-time $99 tax-deductible donation. All you have to do is simply visit patriotclub.us. That's patriotclub.us. Now we're going to wrap things up with the fun fact of the day. Since we like to talk math, let's talk some math. A jiffy is actually a unit of time. It means 1/100th of a second. So Jiffy Pop is just a bunch of liars.
And so are Jiffy Peanut Butter. Jif.
In a jiff.
So Jiffy and a Jif. A Jif is 1 container of peanut butter.
By your measurement.
We're doing math, my friends. Math made easy. And that's going to do it for the Dr. Duke Show. For Freedom Project, I am the said Dr. Duke. She's Katie. Until next time, stay educated, mes amis.